It's important to point out, though, that my colleagues on the left, their candidate, had Omar Mateen's father sitting behind him, who is pro-Taliban, who gave cover to al-Qaeda, and who was anti-gay, who has said that gays deserve to be punished. This is who Hillary Clinton had 3 rows behind her, and Sadiq Mateen says he was invited. You can choose to believe Hillary Clinton's team, who says he wasn't invited, or you can believe Sadiq, who says he was invited. Who knows the real story? We know 64% of people don't trust Hillary Clinton, but it is unfathomable that she had a pro-Taliban person, anti-gay father sitting behind her.
First of all, the campaign and Secretary Clinton have fully disavowed this individual.
And we trust her completely.
Well, we sure as hell don't trust Donald Trump. So let's set that issue aside for a second. They've disavowed. And if you're trying to apply there's some kind of collusion or something between Hillary Clinton and this man whose son massacred LGBT people, that is beyond offensive. So I don't know what you're implying.
What?
B, that he was not invited. C, Donald Trump is going tomorrow with Mark Rubio in Florida, not far from the Pulse nightclub, where 49 LGBT people were massacred, to an anti-gay organization event. So do not try to equate the mistake that was made by her campaign staff, and I agree with Tara, whoever was in charge of crowd last night should lose their job.
May I ask you a question?
And wait a minute. No. You can't ask me a question.
Because you can't answer the question.
Oh, you can't ask me a question, honey. I can't answer, so don't even try.
What attracted the father of the Orlando terrorist to your candidate?
He's a mentally ill individual who ran for president.
I get it.
Pardon me?
What attracted him to your candidate? And your answer was he's mentally ill.
His mantra that... Stop smiling and smirking like it's a funny thing.
No, his mantra that... Stop smiling and smirking like it's a funny thing.
My next guest says Donald Trump is going to turn the press into a whipping boy. Christopher Ruddy is the president and the CEO of the conservative news site Newsmax. He's here with me in New York. Chris, he has already done that pretty effectively, hasn't he? Turned the press into a whipping boy.
Well, it seems like they wanted to play that role because we talked about fake news earlier on your show, or folks have, and that's been the talk of all the news media. What about biased news? I think that had a much bigger impact in this election. And there's a general feeling, Jeffrey Toobin said earlier, people feel the media are responsible. You guys had a responsibility to give fair and balanced news. And I think anybody that looked at this objectively, they were talking about issues the American public didn't call. Trump's Twitter, Trump's Hollywood Access. The voters in Ohio and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, they were worried about jobs and trade. And Donald Trump, to his credit, was in those states talking about those issues. You guys missed the story.
That's looking backwards. Donald Trump keeps looking backwards. Everyone seems to be talking about the election like it was yesterday. It's like an election never ends. I would ask you if you've seen bias in recent days, recent weeks, since the election.
Well, I think looking backwards is very important, and the election was just a very short period, and the president isn't even inaugurated.
True.
Bias in what sense? I think the media continues to be somewhat critical of him, and I don't think they're necessarily giving him a complete fair shake.
In what ways?
This whole discussion, all we've heard is issues about the Electoral College, fake news, Russian hacking, email purpose. I can prove to you that none of those had an impact on the election.
How?
Okay, look at the numbers across. Hillary outperformed Obama in state after state all over. She outperformed in California. She won that by 30 points. She outperformed in Republican Arizona. She outperformed Obama in the state of Texas. Trump only won Texas by 9 points. Romney had won it by 16. Why did Hillary lose? She ran a terrible campaign in the states of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. She barely showed up in some of these states.
Now, you're a conservative media CEO who used to be in touch with the Clintons. Have you talked to them since Election Day?
I have not.
No. But Donald Trump, you have. Do you have the sense that he means what he says when he calls the press dishonest, or is he doing it for show?
I think he means what he says. I think he was surprised because he used to have very good relations with the press, as you know. This is a guy who's probably the most prepared for the communications job as president. He's the most media-savvy guy. He will outstrip Reagan. He will outstrip and outperform John Kennedy.
Does it matter to you that some of what he says is just plain false?
In terms of fake news?
No, in terms of, we were talking about earlier this hour, he talks about the murder rate being at a 45-year high when it's not. Does it matter to the Newsmax audience when he makes stuff up?
Brian, you know you could go through every presidential candidate, every president, and find errors in their facts.
Not to the degree of Donald Trump.
Well, that's a subjective judgment. I think he's
It's a judgment shared by many journalists who are baffled by how often Donald Trump makes
There
misstatements.
is a perception in this country that crime is growing and rising.
Shouldn't we correct the
Yes.
misperception?
Well, I think that's fine. That's the role. And I think a free press, there's a lot of, everybody talks about fake news. Read Thomas Jefferson's second inaugural. If you're at home, Google it, okay? He talks about how bad and evil the press is, and he says they were guilty of falsity and defamation. Large talk of his discussion in that speech. At the end of the moment, he says the public judgment is the best safeguard.
Looming showdown over President Trump's Supreme Court nominee. Republicans need at least 8 Democrats to vote in favor of Judge Neil Gorsuch next week to overcome a filibuster, but most Democrats we've heard from, they're openly opposing the nomination. This means that Senate Republicans might invoke what is called the nuclear option. The controversial move would allow Judge Gorsuch to be confirmed with a simple majority vote without any Democratic support. Join me now is Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah. He serves on the Judiciary Committee. Senator Lee, thank you so much for being with us. I know this is actually a subject you've talked about, written about for a long time. Would you support changing the Senate rules to allow for the nuclear option?
Look, we're going to get Judge Gorsuch confirmed. This is a good judge. This is a judge who interprets the law based on what it says rather than what he might wish it might say. And we intend to get him confirmed. We will get him confirmed one way or another.
One way or another means yes on the nuclear option if you have to go that way.
It means we're going to get him confirmed.
Nuclear.
It means we're going to get him confirmed.
No matter what it takes.
Yeah, look, there are a number of routes this thing could take. I believe that he will be confirmed at the end of this. I'm not sure exactly what procedural route, but he's going to be confirmed. And when we talk about the nuclear option, we have to remember the Democrats went nuclear on the executive calendar. They nuked the executive calendar in November of 2013. As they did that, they purported to carve out this exception for Supreme Court nominees. But all of the rationale that they used at the time applied with equal force to everyone, whether they're serving in the executive branch of government or in the judicial branch of government. They nuked the entire thing. And so for them now to say that, well, it shouldn't have extended to that is a little disingenuous. 3.5 years later, to have regrets about the fact that they nuked the executive calendar is not a reason not to confirm Judge Gorsuch.
And look, I've talked to Democratic senators who flat out tell me they do regret that they did it at all. They regret that they made that move because it didn't allow them to filibuster some cabinet appointees. But the fact is, you're absolutely right. They did it first. The question now is, are you willing to go there? It sounds like yes. I'm just curious why you're not willing to say that you would support the nuclear option.
Yeah, just to be clear, I have an overall policy of not signaling in advance of a particular procedural move in the Senate exactly what course I'm going to take, in part because it relies on facts not yet in evidence. It relies on things that we don't yet know and whether or not we have to go there. But again, I want to get back to this other point that I was making before, which is that the Democrats, in fact, nuked the entire executive calendar. That's what they did in November of 2013. Whether they acknowledge that or not is a different question. I don't see this as, are we willing to take the next step? There is no next step. This is the step they created in November of 2013.
Well, look, I mean, they say that it did not apply to Supreme Court justices. They made that point at the time on the floor. But both you and I know we're talking about, this is not like it's in the Constitution. You're a constitutionalist. I mean, it's not like the Senate rules are written in the Constitution. You can make them up as you go along. It's precedent. The precedent is, at least right now, that, Supreme Court justices, you can filibuster them right now, but you say you want to go nuclear.
I push back on that. I push back on that. I want to be very clear. When they did this back then, sure, they might have said we're not necessarily intending this to extend to other circumstances, but in every situation where we've been confirming someone, whether it's to an executive branch position, to an independent board or commission, to a federal district judge vacancy, a federal circuit court vacancy, any of those things, ever since November of 2013, the precedent has been established that the executive calendar having been nuked, it takes only 51 votes to close debate on a nominee. That is based on the rationale that they used at the time. which extends to the whole of the executive calendar.
But you would be the first ones to do it. And again, I'm not arguing you shouldn't. I mean, what goes around comes around in politics. I mean, the Democrats may have made this bet in 2013. I just still don't understand why you won't admit that you're going to do something that hasn't been done before for Supreme Court justices.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, one of the reasons why I'm not talking about exactly what we're going to do, we don't know how many votes we will have on cloture. And so there may be no reason to have this debate of whether this was something that's already been done or whether this was being done for the first time. And like I say, I have a personal policy of not signaling in most circumstances what procedural steps I might take in the Senate before we know whether it's going to be necessary anyway. But since you're pushing back, I have to point out it's not really taking a next step. This is the step they took in November of 2013. Every single argument they made in support of their decision to nuke the executive calendar extends to the entirety of the executive calendar and not just to the non-Supreme Court nominees.
All right. Again, Democrats would disagree with that, but I think we've run the course on this subject. I think we've run the course. Let me ask you. Can I ask you one question about health care? I don't want to lose you on health care. I don't want to lose you on health care.
Democrats would respond differently, but you asked them what they said just a few weeks before the November election this last year. They were already signaling that they were going to apply this in the context of Supreme Court nominees. So the fact that Democrats may say otherwise is contradictory to their own arguments and to their own statements just before this election.
I understand it, and they, of course, the two words that they might say is Merrick Garland. So when you're talking about rules here, you're talking about precedent. You know, again, it's just you guys have the power right now. You can do this. All I was trying to get to was. I have no idea.
What does Merrick Garland have to do?
I think what Democrats would say. I think what Democrats would say. I think what Democrats would say, you know, for Republicans to say you shouldn't filibuster a Supreme Court nominee, Democrats would respond and say, well, you shouldn't block a Supreme Court nominee from even having hearings on Capitol Hill.
Fine.
All I was saying was the political environment that has been set up over the last 2 years because of Republicans and Democrats.
Gotcha. But again, the same arguments they used to go nuclear in November 2013 and the same arguments that they were making just weeks in advance of the November 2016 election lead to exactly the outcome that they're now decrying, that they're now calling out against. And I think it's disingenuous.
I only have time for a yes-no question.
Well, joining me now is CNN political commentator and former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus, Angela Rye. Also, William Smith, who was chief counsel for the Senate Judiciary Committee when Senator Sessions was a ranking member. He's currently chief of staff for Representative Gary Palmer. William, let me start off with you. You worked for Senator Sessions. You know the guy. Did he ever exhibit any racist behavior? What do you make of the allegations from 30 years ago?
He never exhibited any racial behavior. If you look at the testimony of Mr. Hebert, who you just had there, he has provided false testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee during that confirmation hearing. If you go back and look at the real transcript, Mr. Hebert had to supplement his testimony to admit that he lied during that confirmation hearing.
So you're saying categorically that Sessions is being smeared on this?
That's exactly right. So there's no doubt in my mind that Senator Sessions is being smeared. If you go back and look at the transcripts and you look at the testimony that Hebert provided, later on he had to come back and say, I'm sorry, I lied at this confirmation hearing.
Angela, how do you reconcile what William is saying about the Senator Sessions that he knows personally?
So there are a couple of things here. You hear often people who exhibit racist behavior saying things like, I have black friends. And that does not negate institutional or systemic racism. I don't know if Jeff Sessions is racist or not, but I do know that he acknowledged, perhaps saying that the NAACP was communist or un-American, an organization that has worked to protect not only the rights of black people in this country, but all people since 1909. I don't know if Jeff Sessions is racist or not, but I know that a deputy U.S. attorney who worked under him said that he called him repeatedly boy and told him to watch how he talked to white folks. I don't know if Jeff Sessions is racist or not, but I do know that he's worked to, fraudulently, by the way, to prosecute a lead organizer that worked with Dr. King and 2 other civil rights activists for voting fraud. 1986, Anderson, the same year that he stood before the Judiciary Committee for that nominations hearing. I don't know if he's a bigot, but I know that he's worked vehemently against immigrants in this country, that he supports building a wall, and I don't know if he's a bigot. I'm not done, William. I'm not done. I'm almost done. I don't know if he's a bigot or not, but I know that he's said some horrible things about the LGBTQ community, and he's opposed them. He's also opposed.
But clearly, politically, he doesn't agree with you. But
I'm not
those
talking
are
about politics, Anderson. I'm talking about human decency.
Okay.
You don't call a grown
William,
black man
I want you to be able to
boy.
respond.
I don't think she knows much about human decency.
Oh,
she doesn't
really?
know Jeff Sessions. She's never met Jeff Sessions. She's never spent 30 seconds with Jeff Sessions. I've spent 20 years of my life around Jeff Sessions. I know Jeff Sessions well. And so to sit around here and say a person you've never met, a person you don't know, a person you never talked to is a racist is inappropriate.
So let me ask you, William, counselor, let me ask you this. When did you hear me say?
Have you ever met Jeff Sessions?
When did you
have
hear?
You spent
yes,
10
I
minutes
have
with
met Jeff Sessions, actually.
The answer to that is no, you have not spent 10 minutes with Jeff Sessions.
Okay, you asked a question. Let her respond.
So, William, let me help you because even though we're both attorneys, somehow you actually missed what I said. What I said repeatedly was I don't know if Jeff Sessions is a racist. I don't know if he's a bigot. I gave you the fruit. And I know one thing. We know a tree by the fruit it bears. So you can call it what you want to. I don't know if he's racist or not.
You don't like Jeff
No,
Sessions.
this isn't about the policies.
William, go ahead.
You don't like Jeff Sessions' policies, and that's your big problem. So, but the American people like the policies Jeff Sessions has come up with. That's the reason he's been reelected by overwhelming amounts. And that's the reason the American people have said, we stand with Jeff Sessions.
The American people
they
haven't
said
stood
that.
With
you.
Well, but Angela, voters have voted
in
for
Alabama.
Him. Well, yeah, in
Alabama
to be their senator for many, many years.
Sure.
I mean, he's put himself in the public arena.
And I hate to say this, Anderson, but let's be honest. We have people who vote in the South who don't necessarily stand with where I stand on voting rights. Jeff Sessions had the opportunity to work to ensure that it was easier for people in this democracy to vote, and he's opposed that as well.
How did Jeff Sessions vote on the Voting Rights Act? He voted for.
How?
Okay?
What has he
done
to move the Voting Rights Amendments Act, William? What has he done for that?
What has
he done after Shelby versus Holder?
Let me talk about what Jeff Sessions has done. When you and probably the NAACP was opposing Janice Rogers Brown, a fine African-American jurist to sit on the bench, Jeff Sessions was right there defending her. Where were you at?
So, again, William, you're making a lot of assumptions.
I'm asking you a question.
That's
when
fine.
Jeff Sessions was there defending Janice Rogers
you
Brown.
asked the question. Let her answer now.
So tonight you've attacked me on my human decency. You told me I'm not a decent person.
I'm asking you where you were when Jeff Sessions was fighting for civil rights.
You know where I was when he was fighting for civil rights? Not here. I'm still not here, apparently, because that's not his record. What I will tell you is...
You don't know its record.
Okay.
You've got a bunch of rhetoric.
I actually don't have a bunch of rhetoric.
Show me some facts.
These are facts. You just don't like them because you're the one black guy that he hired on the committee doesn't make him a civil rights leader, William. It actually really doesn't. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, you can leave it at that because you have nothing.
I actually have a lot. I gave you a list. You just don't like the list.
We're gonna take a break.
Reptile wins. Flawless victory.
When it comes to harassment, is there something that you won't do? I mean, what we saw in Milwaukee, the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, you put up a photo of a transgender student on the screen. The student left school.
Actually, the student had already decided to leave. They told us or Broadway or some no-name blog. They'd already decided to leave, actually. So that's a mistake.
But why?
I'm perfectly comfortable. Well, I see myself as a second-wave feminist. I'm perfectly comfortable standing by that decision. I don't believe that men, whatever their gender identity, should be in women's bathrooms. I don't think that men should be in stalls next to 6-year-old girls, and I don't care who has things to say about that. I consider that to be a mission of protecting women, sticking up for women. And if you can stand,
by humiliating an individual, putting their picture up.
This is a professional gender activist who had filed a lawsuit against their university, already decided to leave because they didn't get the result they want. This wasn't just some poor person suffering. This was a professional activist who had filed a lawsuit against their university. Yes, they're absolutely having thrust themselves into the public sphere in that way, having decided themselves to put themselves out there and to turn themselves into a public spectacle And to be a public spokesperson, yes, absolutely, I'm entitled to express an opinion on this.
We spoke with the college Republicans yesterday. They were so excited to have you come.
Of course, I'm
so
excited.
excited.
Of course they were excited. It's a good show.
We saw them tonight. They look deflated.
Well, of course they're deflated. They wanted the show to happen just like I did.
And now what's going to happen to them on campus? Are they going to get stronger? Or
My experience has been that they. I mean, I've never had a show cancelled like this. Like on the night. This is the first time it's happened. I've always insisted that the show goes on. There's only one other instance, which was in a university in Florida, where the FBI deemed a bomb threat credible, and I just had no option but to cancel for the sake of the student safety. I would have carried on. If I'm going to get blown up, I'm going to get blown up. It's going to happen.
You say that the violence tonight was prompted by the left, but I mean, what we saw on both sides. From what we saw, what we filmed.
Okay, I can tell you from the footage that we have, it's very clear who the instigators are. Now, if you go out and you yell obscenities in someone's face, you call them a hateful bigot, you throw dog feces at them, you might get punched, right? Yeah, sure. Maybe it did go two ways by the end of it. Wouldn't you retaliate if somebody was doing those things to you? I would, even me, even Faggy Milo, would probably throw a punch, right? But it is very, very, very clear who the instigators were, who were responsible for all of that. I tried the best to turn the other cheek, but none of us is perfect. And you cannot expect people who have obscenities hurled at them, feces and urine thrown on them, not to throw a punch back. Of course they will.
What do you want me to ask the students? Because tomorrow we're going to talk to some students who say that they are so scared, they're so frightened, they were so insulted, their world was turned upside down by what happened tonight, by what people said to them, by what they've seen in their student body, by what they've seen happen on their campus, that they're afraid. I mean, what of what? Is that what
are you afraid of? What is going to happen just because somebody believes something different to you? What is going to happen?
I mean, they say that they're afraid of violent acts against them.
Perpetrated by whom? It doesn't happen. Look at the Trump rallies. I mean, you guys reported on those dishonestly too, but look at the Trump rallies. The violence wasn't coming from Trump supporters. My events. The violence isn't coming from my supporters. It's very clear, and everybody knows it. Who throws their toys out the stroller, throws the first punch, throws the first hammer, breaks the first window. It is perfectly, abundantly, crystal clear where this stuff comes from and where it starts.
So what do you make of it?
And if these people are worried about violence, they need to look in the mirror and they need to turn their eyes to their own friends and to the people on their own side. Because it is not my fans and it is not Trump voters who are the problem. It is not Republicans and Libertarians who are out there on the streets spoiling for a fight. All they want is to be left alone. All they want is to be allowed to live their lives as they please and not to have their lives interfered with by nannying, coal-clutching, school-momish social justice warriors. They just want to be left alone.
You were getting hugs and smiles.
Of course.
And people, what do people, I mean, you really are a god to some of these people.
Of course, because I'm the first journalist they've ever heard of that doesn't lie to them and lie about them. You know? The crisis in trust in the media didn't come out of nowhere. Nobody did this to you. You know, Trump didn't do it to you. You did it to yourselves. Because you reported selectively, you withheld information, you lied to and about people, you asked leading questions, all of the creepy, slimy strategies designed to push a particular political agenda, and people got sick of it. They wised up and they got sick of it. And now nobody likes you, nobody trusts you. And it was amazing to me in that Trump press conference when he said what he said about CNN, and the whole room erupted, cheering. Everyone cheered when he called out CNN as fake news. That was so shocking and remarkable to me.
In your opinion, is this the beginning of real news then?
No, I think it is the long overdue beginning of the end of the American media industry as we know it. I think the press in America deserves to burn, and I don't know what's going to come afterwards. I don't know what's going to rise from the ashes. But the major broadcast networks and major newspapers in this country are not performing their essential function. There has been a systemic failure. All I need to do to beat all of you, single-handed, is just be more fun and be more funny, and I am.
Way race. This as controversy swirls around the Trump campaign over the Republican nominee's leaked taxes.
As a businessman and real estate developer, I have legally used the tax laws to my benefit and to the benefit of my company, my investors, and my employees. I mean, honestly, I have brilliantly used those laws.
So what do Donald Trump's supporters think about his taxes, as well as any other controversies? We're joined now by a panel of Republicans and independents who are all Trump supporters. We have Pax Hart, Lair, and Joe Kovac. Great to see you guys this morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, let me start with you, Pax. If Donald Trump has not paid taxes, federal income tax, for 18 years, what do you think about that?
1995 was the year that he claimed a $916 million loss. So I think any small business owner, any business owner in the United States is going to relate to that. You know, I mean, obviously this is on a huge scale, but you know, I've been a business owner. I've gone through, when you're running on fumes, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. What Donald Trump did, this is an incredible comeback story. The law that he used has been used by, I was looking up the other day, it's been used by Mark Zuckerberg, it's been used by Oprah Winfrey, it's been used by Warren Buffett. You know, this was a perfectly allowable thing that he did to carry forward those laws.
Sure. Now, all of those people that you've cited, if they carried over and weren't paying federal income tax, they did pay a lot to charity. Those three in particular have given a lot to charity during that time. Donald Trump, there is no evidence that since 2008 he's given anything to charity. Lair, how do you feel about that?
Well, neither has the Clinton Foundation. I mean,
the Clinton Foundation does give to charity. It does all sorts of things.
They grossed $178 million or so, and they gave away $5 million. Here's the deal. Here's the thing. How does the taxes from 1990 help our economy now? What are the tax policies now? That's what I'm interested in. I don't care about this tax story. This is from 1990. When you drive down the West Side Highway, there are Trump towers all over the place. Yeah. That's what I'm talking. That's what I'm interested in.
And so even though his tax policy that he's put out would not change this for real estate developers, it would keep in place that you could somehow skirt paying taxes for 18 years. Does that give you pause?
No, it does not. It was illegal. These things are legal. These are laws that are put in place. What we're doing is discouraging people who take risk in our society. We need people like Donald Trump who take risk and they hire people. Yeah. They give to the economy. They help the economy. What you guys are doing is just, and it's so funny that the liberal media is just so on this when a lot of the liberal personalities don't pay taxes at all. They're in tax trouble. Al Sharpton, you guys love him. He doesn't pay taxes. Joy Reid, all these other people. But you guys are so on this
I'm
legal
not familiar with Joy Reid's taxes, but
look it up.
I know that we don't love them for not paying taxes. Joe, what do you think?
Well, to me, I don't think that it's an issue at all, because if these are the tax laws that we have, and if people are upset with them, then we should change the laws.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very simple, because you're going to hold Donald Trump to one standard, but Hillary Clinton has a double standard where she gets away with everything.
Well, she has paid, I think she's in the 30% tax bracket, so it is not, those are not equal. She has paid taxes.
But it goes beyond taxes. It just goes beyond to the double standard throughout this campaign that Donald Trump gets annihilated and held on every single word, period,
from
comma,
years ago,
and comma on everything that he says. And then when Hillary says, oh, it was a mistake, then we all forget about it.
Well,
it's no big deal.
Do you
like
think,
about the emails.
But let's talk about the emails and versus the taxes. Do you want to see Donald Trump release his taxes?
I think that if his CPAs and if his attorneys indicate that he shouldn't release them because he's under an audit, then he should release them.
So you're not interested in transparency. You don't require, as a voter, that kind of transparency.
Well, but you see, transparency, we can't pick and choose when we're going to be transparent.
This is between Donald Trump and the IRS.
Okay, so you don't, I'm just asking, as voters, you don't need, you're not interested. You don't need.
What I'm more concerned with is the $6 billion that went missing under the State Department under the Hillary Clinton.
So you're very
interested. That was our money. This money was Donald Trump's money.
Sort of, but if he hasn't paid taxes, let me just challenge you on that, Pax, because if he hasn't paid taxes in 18 years, that means that he has not contributed to the military, to Veterans Affairs, to education system, all the things that he he says he's interested in. So are you okay with a billionaire not contributing to those things for the country?
This goes right to the heart of Hillary Clinton's, rhetoric of.
But Donald Trump, are you comfortable with a billionaire not paying that?
This goes right to the point of, this kind of weird quasi-Marxist, class warfare thing that Hillary Clinton loves to stoke, where, this is Donald Trump's tax liability has nothing to do with my tax liability.
But it has to do with your country. This is what I'm asking. This means he hasn't contributed to the military and Veterans Affairs for 18 years. Are you comfortable with
Donald Trump was paying real estate taxes. Donald Trump was paying payroll taxes. Donald Trump was paying an unbelievable amount of money.
Federal income taxes are what go to these things that he says he cares so much about. So are you comfortable with that?
I am comfortable with Donald Trump, with all of the people who have worked for him, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who've worked for him that he has employed. That way more than compensates from him using an allowable loss carried forward.
And you even mentioned Mort Zuckerberg and other people that have used this law. So why is it being singled out against Donald Trump?
Well, he's running for president, number one. So we're trying to get transparency. I know, Lair, what you said, that you're interested in transparency. So you're hold on, Lair. So you're very interested in seeing Hillary Clinton's emails. That's very important. But not Donald Trump's taxes. So
I'm
why
interested
not
in a lot of
transparency on both?
I find it funny that on Clinton Network News that we're using transparency as a word. And let's talk about transparency, really.
As you insult us, go on.
No, I mean, we all know you guys are the greatest super PAC for her. The thing is that, I mean, there's so many things that, whatever you guys say about Donald Trump, he can hit back harder on her twice. I mean, everything.
She's
transparency.
paid taxes, Lair.
Well, you know what?
I mean, this is a fact. This is part of the record. She's released.
But it goes beyond taxes. It's about integrity, and it's about trustworthiness. The reason why she had such a problem in the primary against Bernie Sanders was that Democrats did not trust her. A majority of the people in America do not trust her, but she says one thing and then she switches her stance to make it advantage.
How about she tell us about her black stepson that you guys aren't covering? Now, you talk about Black Lives Matter a lot around here.
You can't just come in and throw a conspiracy theory out and let it smolder there as we're heading to our next hour.
It's not a conspiracy. Go Black Lives Matter. Go check out her black stepson. Thank you.
Blair, Joe, Pax, we'll be investigating all of that later in the program on our bottom line. Thank you all